the intense fear of going backwards. What does that mean to you? Why was that such a thing?
They're not vulnerable with their business, and they're not vulnerable enough to say, we are bleeding in this area.
Why do you think a lot of realtors decide not to invest in real estate?
I think because a lot of realtors don't know how to manage their money.
But then they put the profit line on the back burner and wonder why they're stressed out in their business all the time. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey. We are officially a top 5% global podcast across all categories because of the great guests that we have on the show. And today is no exception. Keith James from the DC market. Let me just share some of these numbers for a second. 1,700 houses sold since 2019. Started selling in 2017. 80 homes sold personally for $44 million last year. And he also has 15 agents on his team. And collectively, they sold 216 units for $115 million. He's also the founder of a philanthropy that donated over $1 million to charity from his success in real estate. His name is Keith James. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Remington.
Man, after reading all that, I'm jacked. Like, where do we start? What do you, let's start real quick. I always like to ask people what they love about selling in their territory because this is a national podcast. So DC, tell me about DC. What do you love about selling in DC?
I mean, it's the nation's capital. Quite frankly, it's super cool. It's super cool being on Capitol Hill and watching a show the night before where you see the Capitol Hill houses and you're in one of those houses the next day showing a client. What was that show on Netflix? Oh man,
House of Cards.
House of Cards. That was one of my favorite shows, man. And it's kind of cool. You see that scene of the Capitol Hill, and my office is right by that scene, man. So it's pretty awesome. The different structures and houses built in the 1800s.
That is cool. I think there's a character in that show named Remy. That's my
guy. People say I look like him.
Yeah, I was gonna say so. You do. That's my son's name because my name is Remington. We named my son Remington, but we call him Remy.
Yeah.
So it's getting more popularized. Yeah.
Yeah, Remy, man. I remember Remy for sure. That was
He's a great character. Yeah, that show is dark. And it gets even darker. And you're like, the craziest part is that stuff happens.
That stuff definitely happens for sure.
And you're selling houses to these people, Keith.
I'm selling houses to these people, and I have no idea what goes on behind the scenes, and I don't even want to know. I don't ask questions, man.
Well, what I think is fascinating about your story, Keith, is you were a successful athlete growing up. I want to talk about your grandpa because it sounds like he had a lot of influence. You were raised in a single parent home. And in the pre-show, we were talking about this concept. I remember in Diana Kokoska's book, she writes about two brothers, and one of them, the brothers have parents that are alcoholics, and one of them grows up to be an alcoholic, and he blames his parents. He says, "I'm an alcoholic because my parents were alcoholics." The other brother grows up to be successful, and he says, "The reason why I'm successful is my parents were alcoholics." And you had talked about your upbringing as being a major staple in why you found success, but you were raised in a single family home and or single parent home, and your grandfather also had a lot of influence. So tell me about your upbringing and why you think that's a big reason why you've been successful.
Absolutely, man. It's funny because my mom, man, she was in survival mode, and she did everything she could to protect me. She did everything she could to keep me out of trouble. But man, you are a product of your environment. That's just, it is what it is, and my grandfather, we had a lot of love in the house, my mom had me young, and I was raised actually in my grandparents' house because my mom still lived there early on. And so I was raised with a lot of wisdom. I was raised with a lot of courage, man. My grandfather used to hit me with these quotes all the time. And it was crazy because I probably played in over 1,000 basketball, baseball games, man. And I can only remember my grandfather maybe missing 4. He was always there. I always had support in sports. But man, when you're in these neighborhoods that I grew up in, and you got to walk to school, you got to walk home from school, trouble is going to find you, right? So it's different choices that you make. And I was just thankful that I had people behind me that I was afraid to let down. I think that's super important, man. I was so thankful. I had my uncles, I had my mom, I had my grandmother, I had my grandfather.
Man, I totally get that. In moments where you're like you're hit with a decision, if it was just you, the easier choice or the one that maybe you shouldn't make, it is a lot harder if you're thinking about someone specifically who doesn't want to make you to make that choice for a good reason.
Absolutely, man. And I grew up in Columbus, Mississippi. You know, Columbus, Mississippi. We call it the Dirty South. And my area that we grew up in, we call it the trap because it's so easily to get trapped in the area. I got friends to this day, you know, straight A students, honor roll students, man. Some of them went to jail. Some of them are still, you know, back in my neighborhood doing the same thing they were doing before I left the neighborhood. And so trouble's gonna find you when you're in an environment like that. And it's different people you look up to, you know. People don't know people only can look up to what they see. And what we saw was the pharmaceutical salesman. And I'm not talking about the actual pharmaceutical salesman. I'm talking about the people on the corner selling drugs.
Yeah. Thanks for laying that out because that's funny. Well, your grandfather, you mentioned your grandfather had a lot of quotes. The one that I wrote down, and I'm probably going to butcher this so you can clean it up, but you said you can be a star today and a nobody tomorrow, something like that.
You get it right on the head, man. You can be a star today and a nobody tomorrow for sure.
So he told you that when you were, if I remember, when you were actually finding success in sports, because that's when you're vulnerable. It's not when, it's not when you're lazy. I mean, you're vulnerable at all times if you're in what you're calling the trap. But it sounds like he really wanted to make sure you had your head on straight when you were finding success.
He really did. You know, when he saw a lot of people come through my neighborhood, great athletes, great people in sports. He followed sports. I mean, like he's still to this day, 83 years old, 84, goes to high school basketball and high school baseball games and high school football games to this day. So I
love that culture.
He's seen it all. And so you could be a star today and nobody tomorrow. He knew, okay, you're going to be good. I see your work ethic, but you need to be humble because you can be a star today and a nobody tomorrow. And don't take it, please, don't take it for granted.
Well, the next part of your journey, which I find fascinating because you've been in real estate since 2017, but between high school sports, college, the next phase, you had a career path that was corporate. And you told me you got fired not once, but twice. And the second time was like interesting to me because you were number one in the nation.
Yes.
So tell me what it went into that second phase of your life where you were finding quote unquote success, but still finding yourself laid off.
Yeah, man. That was one of the most difficult moments in my life, to be quite honest with you, because when you're number one with a corporate job that, you have to play the game for. And I had worked so hard to get to that number, right? I wanted that. And it was funny. My boss called me and said, Keith, we're having budget cuts, but you have nothing to worry about. Like the company's not going to cut you. 2 weeks later, he called me crying. Sorry, nothing I can do. And it was at that moment, the light bulb went off and I said, I can never depend on corporate ever again. Ever again. And so that's when the mindset, it all starts in the mind, right? That's when that mindset shifted.
Had you always been thinking about real estate? Because one of the fascinating things I think about you is you bought, at the age of 23, you bought your first rental, but you didn't even own your own home. What made you do that?
Yeah, man. I wanted to buy in the neighborhood I grew up in because I wanted people to see that people like me don't have to always be tenants, but they can also be landlord. So I wanted my friends to see that. And also, I wanted my friends to start asking questions. Why is he buying real estate? Why is he going to buy duplexes? And he doesn't even have a house that he owns that he lives in. Why is he doing that? And that was the mindset. I wanted people to understand mentally that this can be done. I can do it. You can do it. And so I started underwriting my friends' deals.
Oh, wow. But this is before you got into real estate.
Before I even had my license.
So when you got fired the second time at the height of your success, was that an easy, did you look at what you were already into and you're like, okay, I'm going to go this route because I kind of know real estate because I've been buying property, or what went into that decision?
Relationships will take you places money can't, Remington. Relationships will take you places money can't. And when I got fired, a week later, 3M called me back and say, hey, we got a territory in a different division opening up in Houston and one in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to go to Houston because I'm from the South. Also, living is cheaper. And so, and warmer, right? But of course, they ended up sending me to DC. Right? You know, what's kind of cool is I don't have any family here, but my wife has family here. And so when we got here, I was devastated. But I'm a networker, man. I've always been, you know, networking. And I went to this happy hour, my first week being here. I went to this happy hour and I met my now business partner, Ryan Butler. And that was the beginning of like real estate sales. He was the person that said, Keith, you need to come over and do this. And it's crazy. That story is crazy, man. That's a crazy story. We're in this bar and he always make the joke when he speaks. He picked me up in the bar and he actually did. I see this guy come over and he asked me a question. What's your name? Where you from? And I tell him where I'm from. He said, oh, I'm from Mississippi as well. And I say, Mississippi? I'm like, where you from in Mississippi? He says, Indianola Gentry. And Indianola is a small city in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. And he says, but I lived in Columbus, Mississippi for about 4 years because my dad was in the military. I'm from Columbus, Mississippi. Now, Ryan is 2 years older than me. So the middle school, he was leaving the middle school when I was going into the middle school. But we never got to meet. Crazy story is my mom worked on the child development on the Air Force base for 36 years, right? So the Child Development Center, daycare. His younger brother went to that daycare. My mom watched his younger brother in that daycare. And we didn't meet until we're adults in Washington, D.C.
Isn't it crazy how having so much in common in your past links you in that moment to, and we know the end of the story, he's your business partner now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the universe never lies, man. The universe never lies. And even when he presented the idea, you know, and at that time, I didn't know he was prospecting. Like, that's what he was at the bar doing.
So I'm looking at you. Most people listen to this, so they don't see how sharp dressed you are. You have a really nice jacket, very well put together. Is that the reason he went over to you? Is like, this guy looks sharp, I want to get to know him? Or why did he come over to you in the first place?
Man, I think I have a cool energy that I attract cool people to be around me.
No, that's true, yeah.
But I think, you know, that's a great question. That's a great question.
I mean, it's something as simple as that. Like, I think people listen to these podcasts and they're like trying to get a nugget, right? They're trying to think, because we have top realtors in the country like yourself. We have authors and speakers, and then we have just some of the shows that we do are just marketing. So everyone comes in hoping to get something out of it. And I think sometimes they think it's going to be the question when I ask you at some point, what do you think success is? And that's where they think they're going to get it. But something as small as you saying, I have a cool energy, and that was the reason why someone was attracted enough to come up and just talk to you, which is now your business partner, and you've done millions of dollars worth of deals. There's something to be said for that. I hope people realize that those are the small little things that make big differences. Those are the butterfly effect.
You're right. And you know, that's a skill set that can't be coached, quite frankly. But
I feel like, I don't know if I agree with you on that. I feel like it can be. I feel like you can teach people how to be. Think about your kids. You have kids.
Yeah.
You're coaching them on how to be likable. I mean, it might not be like a class on like how to sit and talk to people, but you are correcting. You're telling people. And like I think about my girls. I'm like, hey, you can tell, you can tattle, or you can do what you think is right in this moment. But what will that yield you? Where will you be? How will people feel about you based on these decisions? Like, I think your mom and your grandpa were correcting you in times that gave you the opportunity to build this facade, this persona that you have. You know, I don't know. Do you agree with that?
No, I want that. I 100% agree with that for sure. They definitely were correcting. My mom was very hard on me. I still fear my mom to this day. And so I'm thankful for it. You know, I thank her all the time for being as tough as she was on me, because she knew what it took to make it out of the neighborhood. And she knows, even to this day, she knows. I had very, 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 very fearful of going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that in the pre-show. That was something that drove you, is your the intense fear of going backwards. What does that mean to you? Why was that such a thing?
Because a lot of people I grew up with, man, and in that area, there's a scarcity mindset. There's a scarcity mindset, and there's not a mindset of abundance. And when you have the mindset of abundance, there's so much you can achieve when you're moving as a unit. The power of relationship, the power of partnership, that's super important. And it was just not, you don't really see that where I come from.
Well, but at the time, you're using big words for a 16-year-old. Like, at what point did all this mindset that you currently have start to take place? Because you got out of there before you were so well put together. Like, how did you get to that mindset of abundance as a teenager?
Sports, being on a team, and seeing how, I was a point guard. So I played point guard, and I was the floor general. I had to know my personnel. I had to know my teammates. I had to know who could dribble the ball up the court, who not to pass it to in certain times, who to pass it to when we need a bucket, or should I take that bucket myself? A lot of times I wanted to take it myself, but I had to be. I was a captain of the basketball team, so I had to really develop this mindset as a leader, and that was important to me.
Who do you got? So this might not age well. But who do you got? We're in the sweet, at that time of this recording, we're about to approach the Sweet 16. Who you got in your Final Four?
I got Duke. I got Auburn. I got Florida. And I got Duke, Auburn, Florida. And I think one of my teams got knocked out. Maybe it was St. John.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One of the others.
Oh, yeah. St. John's, man. That was interesting. Who do you got going all the way?
Duke.
Yeah, that's a strong pick this year.
Cooper Flag, I trust, man.
Yeah, that kid can play.
And I'm a high school fanatic. Remember, I'm a high school, college basketball fanatic.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it plays out. You could be very right. At the time of this, when this comes out, we'll see if you're right. I want to get back to the name of your brokerage, the name of your brand, Coalition. I thought that was a pretty cool story. You've got 3 partners now, right?
Yep. It's 3 of us.
So tell me the story of Coalition.
Yeah, so Coalition started in 2019. When you're trying to do something bigger than yourself, you can't do it alone, right? We started prepping for Coalition in 2018. So Harrison Beecher brought Ryan Butler into the real estate sales business. Ryan Butler brought me into the real estate sales business, right? So there's some lineage there. And quite frankly, Harrison had the blueprint. Ryan took the blueprint and did it his way. I took both of their blueprints and did it my way. And we weren't even on a team yet. And we all had similar mindsets. If I had a question, I would call Ryan or Harrison. How to do X, Y, and Z. And there's power in that as well. When we came, I wanted to form a team. Didn't know how I wanted to do it, but I know I wanted to form a team because I've always been on a team. And Ryan wanted to start a team. Harrison wanted to expand his team. And Ryan looked up and was like, why don't we just come together and do this together? And so we started prepping. And Ryan is a visionary. Like, he can see things 20 years out. He's an ultimate visionary. And Harrison, he's the political guy. He was G-Car president. He's kissing babies and shaking hands. He's traveling across the country to speak. I'm more of the sales and relationships and meeting people. I've never had a job where I didn't want to, I went to the same place every day. And I'm a one-on-one person. I'm boots on the ground. That's just who I am. And so it made sense for us to come together because we didn't all have the same skill set.
Hey. So what did you guys do? Because you guys have found, since that time, amazing success. What have you done right in this team where other teams struggle? Because I know there's someone listening to this and they've either started a team and it's like a nightmare. They're like, I just need to go back to being a single agent. Or they're on a team and they're like, something's off about, I don't know if I fit here or something's wrong. What about your team thrives where other teams struggle?
I think we're vulnerable with our business. We don't mind opening up the books and going to meet with a Jen Davis to say, hey, what do we need to do? How can we get better? Like, how can we stop this bleeding over here? We're not afraid to open the books and go talk to a Gary Keller and say, hey, man, we need help. We see this coming. How can we stop this? we're not afraid to go to anybody in the top 100 teams. I'm going to name some teams, the Moore team out of Sacramento, and say, hey, they are a three-headed monster out there, just like we are in the DC area on the East Coast. What are you struggling at? This is what we're struggling at. Collaboration. We believe in collaboration over competition. And I think a lot of people, egos get in the way, and they're not vulnerable with their business. And they're not vulnerable enough to say, man, we actually have a bleeding, we are bleeding in this area. Like, we need help, and that's important.
You mentioned the very first thing you said was you're vulnerable and you take feedback. I think that most of us would say, yeah, we'll take feedback, but they don't really think about what that actually looks like, because they've been given feedback many times in different ways. And the natural inclination is to get defensive, to justify, to disagree. And man, I will tell you that what you do with feedback can be a superpower, because I think after, running this podcast for 2 years and talking to the most successful realtors, even some of them at the top struggle to have fulfillment in their business because they don't take feedback well. Like they take it and they're like, well, they're wrong and I'm right, and then they don't grow. Like there's no way you can grow unless you actually ask for feedback, one, and then do something about it too. Now consider the source. Some people are wrong. I'm sure there's been plenty of people along the way that have told you how to run your business that were actually wrong. But it sounds like you're talking more about like feedback from, how you dealt with people and the way people want to be served, and because you're a big philanthropist.
Yeah, all of that, man. Be quick to be slow to hire and quick to fire. But we even had people that said, "Oh, three-headed monster, that's not going to work." It's not going to work. And so, it's bigger than us, though. I think that's important. It's about the nonprofits we donate to, we give money to, and for kids that are in need. It's about the kids that we get out of the neighborhoods to go take them overseas to see a different world, a different side of the world, right? It's about the people that thought they couldn't buy homes, and now because there are programs in place, and we actually donate to some of those nonprofits that has those programs, they can now purchase homes, right? It's bigger than us, man. 90% of the wealthiest Americans get their wealth from real estate, and we all know there's no need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there, and that's how generational wealth is started.
What percentage of you said generational wealth is what?
80% of the wealthiest Americans gets their wealth from real estate.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because you started buying rentals and investing at the age of 23 before you even owned your own home. And there's a lot of realtors, even at the top that I interview sometimes, that just aren't invested in real estate. Some don't even own their own home. Like that's the makeup of their portfolio. I've always been really intrigued by the realtors that get into the game and then, practice what they preach and invest. Being in DC, do you mind sharing the makeup of your portfolio? Do you put anything in stocks and bonds, or do you really go hard at real estate?
I go hard at real estate because that's what I know. I do put my money in stocks, and I have a bucket for Robinhood, right? But I kind of focus more on index funds, and meeting with my financial planner to put money where my 401k, SEP IRA, right? That's super important. Putting because I need a lot of tax deductions, right? So I'm putting as much money in those type of vehicles. And I try to
start a restaurant, man. You'll have all the tax sheltering you need. Tax deductions. You'll lose money. It'll be great.
You're right. You're right about that, man. You're right about that. But yeah, I'm my portfolio is majority real estate, but I do have some vehicles on the investment side.
Why do you think a lot of realtors decide not to invest in real estate?
I think because a lot of realtors don't know how to manage their money. Quite frankly. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you save. And in the real estate industry, we love this thing called GCI, gross commission income. And that's what mess a lot of people up, quite frankly. Because gross commission income is top line. That's not the net. You got to take that 30 to 40% out for taxes. And so Uncle Sam don't come knocking on your door. And what happens is people spend their money. And when Uncle Sam comes knocking at their door, they don't have anything to give Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam is going to get his by any means necessary, right? So a lot of agents don't know how to manage their money. And what we've done at Coalition, myself and my 2 business partners, we've created investment vehicles for agents and also a space for agents to come get that financial literacy. We're always educating on that.
Oh,
man.
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, GCI. I mean, it's the same as all top line revenue and any sales. GCI to me is a tool. It's a tool to be able to tell people how successful you were, whether you want to use that number or any accolade, but it should not be something that you put stock in personally. And that's where I think people go wrong. They get excited about the trophy and they get excited about the top line revenue and they look at growing that number because it's impressive and I feel good about that. But then they put the profit line on the back burner and wonder why they're stressed out in their business all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 1000%. And it takes that vulnerability, because one thing people do not like to talk about is money, especially when it's their own money.
You're talking about like when you're selling homes to people?
Oh man, even in that moment, being able to create spaces for my clients to communicate about their finances, right? And so agents with egos, they're definitely not going to talk about if they've saved the right amount of money to pay the taxes for the last 5 years,
Is that a struggle with the agents on your team? Is like showing them the way, the right way, and making sure they have fruitful businesses underneath you?
I wouldn't say it's a struggle. I would say that for our agents, we have these different committees, right? We have a culture committee, a social committee, and a financial education committee. And we do like the Millionaire Wealth Club with our team and our agents, especially new agents coming into the business. We want to get them in the right mindset as quick as possible when it comes to money, because when your personal life is in order, your business life is going to be in order. That's just how so we're big on educating our agents and making sure that financially they're doing the right things, and even providing them with the tools and the right people, being in their corners to help them get to where they want to go financially.
Well, since we're talking about finances, let's go to that final stretch, that fourth quarter of finances when you can finally give. You've made enough money for yourself. You're providing yourself a lifestyle. You're maybe living even a little bit more lavishly for fun once you start making $1 more than you did before. But then at some point you feel like giving back, and your philanthropy has given over $1 million to variouses. That's my first question. How do you decide where to give?
We're very intentional about it. Let me just say that. It's funny. Our clients, we actually give our clients the option to pick 3 charities. So at the end of the year, we host a big Christmas party, right? And before that Christmas party, we send out an email to all of our clients and we say, hey, which charity would you like for us to partner with for the next year? So we don't just like give money. We actually partner with that charity for an entire year. It's kind of like us coming to sit on that board to help.
That's cool. And you involve you're basically putting your clients on your team. You're a teammate now.
Absolutely. That's community building. You know what I mean? And we're big on that. And so whatever charity wins in that voting, that's who we go with for the next year. And we have a big party. We announce it at the end of the year, saying our 2025 nonprofit partner is going to be Birdseed, right? And that's kind of how we go about doing it.
Well, you also mentioned you take students abroad, or you've got philanthropies where you're actually giving the money, but then you actually go overseas with these kids. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so my fraternity brother and close friend, he founded this nonprofit called All Abroad. All Abroad Incorporated is responsible for taking kids abroad to expose them to a different side of the world, because it's always you are a product of your environment. So it's always good to get out of your environment to get exposure. If you're not exposed, you're just gonna know. You're gonna do what you see, and sometimes that's not always good. And so he asked me to come sit on the board, and I came to sit on the board. But what we found was that when we take these kids abroad, before they go, the first meeting, so we have 2 meetings before we go. The first meeting, these kids don't even know each other, right? And by the time they get ready to come back from that trip, they're crying because of the bond that they built. And I think that's important, super important. And it teaches
shared experiences,
man.
And you go to Europe mostly, or all over?
Oh, we've been to Africa 2 years in a row. We went to Kenya. We went to Mombasa, Diani Beach. We went to Brazil last year. This year we're going to Guatemala. because we also do service work when we go over there. We've been to Costa Rica.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's such a cool, and do you go every year with them?
Absolutely.
Man,
Absolutely. Yeah.
what a cool thing.
Absolutely.
Like you just shut down and like imagine the perspective. I mean, you don't have to imagine, you're quite literally doing it, but I'm thinking for myself, like if I shut it down and went abroad with kids who have never seen that every single year, like that is a very cool thing you do. What do you do when you're overseas?
Yeah. So we do like different like mission trips. So we'll go and do service trips in the forest. We'll also even like show them the lifestyle of people in that area. Like when we went to Brazil, we went to the favelas in the neighborhoods, some of the roughest neighborhoods in Brazil, just to see how they live. We want our kids to see how they live abroad. And then we also want our kids to see there are people just like you over here struggling with the same thing, excelling in the same thing. You know, it's just all about exposure.
Do you find that so you're in the big city now, you're in DC, but selling homes all over all the metros. Like when you go to some of these different parts, different countries, different cities, is the poverty in Brazil similar to the poverty in DC, or is it different?
You know, it's different in some areas because I would say over here, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel if you're connected to the right people, if you are doing the right things. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. In some areas, man, there's just not a light at the end of the tunnel. There's just not a light.
Yeah, have you ever seen the movie City of God?
You know, man, that's my business partner's favorite movie. He keeps
if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. You would speak to you because of all these things that you're telling me. But that's the first thing I thought of. I think it's in Brazil.
I think so too. Yeah.
But there's, again, kind of to bring it full circle, there's these two brothers, and one of them takes that route of, you know, basically getting involved with gangs, and the other one tries to avoid it. And it's just like how the choices, Slumdog Millionaire, same thing, same concept, where like the choices of two brothers get them to a certain place. And that's quite literally what you're doing with these kids. You're showing them, by taking them across seas and seeing different scenarios, like decisions that they make and where to get them, you're a product of getting out of the trap. Do you ever wonder what it would be like if you were back there? Like if the choices, like maybe you didn't get to DC, but and become a realtor, but it sounds like you would have been used in different ways by God based on your mindset. Do you ever wonder what it would be like if you actually were back there, but just still the same person that you are?
Yeah, sometimes I do. You know, it's funny you say very big on faith. I believe in you walk by faith and not by sight. And, you know, I think about that sometimes. I also think about, would I be happy? And so those thoughts kind of immediately, go outside, leave out of my head quite quickly. But I do sometimes, think about it.
On that note, let's leave the audience with faith, or not faith, but yes, faith, with hope. I always like this show, and everything we do in Real Producers really is hope in the industry, is hope in belief in yourselves. I mean, like we were interviewing the top realtors in the entire country, just like you. And in a world where the political landscape, quite literally for you in DC and across the country, and what's going on just in NAR alone and real estate alone in the last 18 months, it'd be really easy to say, we got our teeth kicked in and we're going to, react a certain way. But the ones at the top, the Keith James of the world, have a lot of hope and a lot of belief. What's your word of encouragement to the audience?
If you can survive temporary pain, if you can survive temporary pain, you're going to come out of it greater and better than you've ever been before, quite frankly.
I love that. Guys, if you're listening to this and you think this particular show will impact someone, please send it to one person. Keith James, thanks for being on.
Man, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're a top 5% global podcast, Real Producers Nation. If you know someone that should run a franchise in your neck of the woods, because we don't have one out there, send us an email at podcast@realproducersmag.com, and also send us leads for what you want us to talk about and who you want us to talk to. We'll see you next time.